Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of To The Point. I'm Kriti Mishra. And on today's show, my guest is Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Mr. Guru Prasad Mohapatra. So welcome to Rajya Sabha TV and thank you so much for joining us.
You.
So first of all, let's talk about the FDI. Now the FDI inflows crossed the $500 billion milestone. The journey of course started with the enactment of FEMA. How do you review the journey today and what does it reflect on the credentials of India?
A couple of important things that were done to promote and liberalize FDI. One is of course the introduction of FEMA, which was a less harsh legislation than its previous dispensation. Secondly, the FIPB was abolished, and what was done is that most of the provisions in FDI become automatic, either 100% automatic or majority automatic. And those which were under the approval route, which essentially meant the concerned ministry had to approve. So, those went to the respective ministries. There is nothing called a FIPB. So, that made the process simpler, because since most of the FDI process was under the automatic route, so nobody was involved in approving. It all happened automatically. The investor and the investee in India, the investor from abroad, they decided to have an FDI exchange. So, they had to intimate the RBI as per the procedure, and if it was automatic, it happened. All that you knew after the event happened, that it has happened. So, since as I said, bulk of the procedures are automatic, and somehow because of the buoyancy of the Indian economy, and you also remember that FDI is largely private sentiment driven. So, the investors somehow feel that this is an ideal place to invest, this is the ideal government structure to invest. There are reliable fallback mechanisms. So, there are effective grievance redressal mechanisms. These are the typical things which an investor looks into. As I said, these are all investor driven this thing, plus a large number of government initiatives which are essentially reforms and initiatives that have been taken in the last 5-6 years. India's ease of doing business position is improved tremendously. Corporate taxes have been reduced, the insolvency procedures have been simplified, a lot of banking reforms have happened. So, the private sector, the investor community looks into these kind of clues to invest. Probably all these have happened together. That is why despite the COVID, our FDI growth in the last 5 years has been much more than the FDI of total cumulative of the last 10 years preceding that. But if you look at even at the COVID times, we always expected that from April onwards, when the massive lockdown started in the country, we thought that this will be slowing down, but this has not slowed down. In fact, this has grown at a higher rate than previous, including the foreign portfolio investments.
Absolutely, sir. As you said that despite COVID, despite this exogenous shock and the disruptions, the economic disruptions that it caused, but the moot point is how do we maintain this momentum ahead?
One is of course government's job as a facilitator, government job as implement things in time and sending the right signals. So, we need to continue to do this good thing that we have been doing, and more procedures have to be simplified, compliance burden for the trading industry has to be reduced, and ease of doing business is not just a World Bank award, it is actually how easy it should be for your citizens to conduct their day to day life, and if you find it easy to conduct your day to day life, I am sure it will reflect on running a trading industry also. So, those things which we have been doing probably in the right direction, we continue to do it and need to do it with more enthusiasm, more focused attention, then I think this momentum should continue and get increased.
But sir, one of the concerns, as you talked about ease of doing business rankings, of course, India stands now at the 63rd position, improvement of 67 places. But one of the issues is of consistency of policy. How do we adopt a synchronized approach along with the states?
Consistency of policy is a very important indicator for everybody, even for private citizens. You require consistency of everything. As a simple household, you require consistency of water supply timing also. You need water supply to come at a particular time, in a particular force, in a particular manner. So, same happens to the trading industry. They want, if you have income tax policy, if you have corporate tax policy, you have a particular GST regimen, a particular GST rate, you have particular municipal taxation rate, you have particular power utility rate, then there should be consistency, there should be policy longevity, and this governments have realized all across. The state governments have realized, and the central government of course has been emphasizing on it. So, this we are discussing at several levels. We are also now trying to experiment with a model of signing an MOU with the states, that for all the investors who come to this thing, all the new investment that you do, if today when he takes, for example, somebody wants to start a steel plant in your state, and steel plant is a power intensive industry, and he knows that the power rate today for high power tension power is 8 rupees per unit, and he thinks that this will continue for at least 2-3 years, or till the power regulator increases it by a quasi judicial transparent process. There should not be any ad hocism in that, there should not be any ad hoc increase. It is not that today the corporate tax rate is 17%, then tomorrow suddenly somebody in the budget somebody sees become suddenly 25%. So, this kind of thing is policy what the investor looks at, that there should be policy consistency. But I am very happy to share with you that in central government there is a large unanimity that policy consistency should be there. That is why you will see whether it is budget or any other financial policy announcements of government of India in any field, there is large an emphasis that there should be a period. It should, this is valid for 5 years, this is valid for 7 years. So, that is what gives consistency. At the same time, in a democracy, when you have elections based contested and won by political parties, and political party is what forms a government. So, there will be some policy changes, but policy consistency does not mean policy changes will not be there. So, that is where to differentiate between the two. But what is being said that if you have a taxation policy today, for example, if you have a power tariff rate, regular increase like inflation, there is a effect of inflation, there will be regular increases in everything, but it should be a predictable regular increase and not something unpredictable. Okay, today I have bought a land thinking that I am allowed to construct an industry. Tomorrow my land laws in that state should not change in such a manner that tomorrow somebody says no, there is some environmental restriction, you have to better close down everything and go. So, that is a policy inconsistency.
So, when do we expect this MOU?
We have just shared a draft. It is very difficult what I am saying to get, but states are also agreeing, because after all there is a tremendous competition among states to attract and retain investments. So, states are also very keen, and this ease of doing business, ranking of states, these are all based on consistencies, because the more consistent you are, the better you attract investment, the more investments you attract to your state. So, we have shared a draft MOU recently. So, let us take it takes some time, but let us hope that sometime in the next couple of months we should be able to come out with an acceptable draft which can then be signed.
All right, Mr. Mohapatra, as we are talking about investment and FDI inflows, of course, we have touched this milestone of $500 billion, but experts also say that we have to walk a long way right now and compete with countries like China, Malaysia, Thailand and Vietnam. What is the way ahead?
So, this one thing we must realize, that while we are very good in manufacturing once upon a time, somehow last few years our services sector grew very fast, and whatever the numbers we saw in the GDP, the dominance from agriculture was shifted towards services, while our manufacturing took a back seat. Because it is not just India, you will see many major manufacturing countries, like for example, England does not produce anything anymore, America hardly produces anything, they all are dependent on a particular geography, particular country. When COVID started, we realized that in the month of February, March, that India does not produce a single PPE, India does not have the capacity to produce a single N95 mask, we do not produce ventilators of the kind and type and the rates that you require in India, we do not produce testing kits in India. So, and that is when we realized that we do not produce this, then the whole world realized they do not produce it. So, everybody was running to a particular country to buy. That is how it was felt that this global supply chains need to be relocated, and that is how this whole thing started being talked about, that probably everybody will come to India. Definitely there is a lot of interest in India, because India has a huge population, there is a demography advantage, there is a skill, lot of large skill sets are available here, and at a much cheaper rate for the similar skill sets that you would pay in any other country. Then you have land tracts available, reasonably good infrastructure, a further push towards creating better quality infrastructure in the country. That's how the national infrastructure pipeline bouquet of projects are there, which the government has talked about. So, based on all this and the need for looking for alternative basis of production, need for we feel that there is a large interest being shown by prospective investors. I am talking of foreign investors. Indian investors there of course continue to invest and they are showing interest. So, we are seeing that. So, to attract that several things have been done, many of the reforms have been done. Corporate taxes were reduced significantly last September 2019. As I mentioned before, the whole lot of changes in the simplifying the environmental protection regime, insolvency regime, the ease of doing business, the simplifying various statutory procedures that we have, simplifying procedures for approvals of different kinds that we have, reducing the compliance burden. These are one set of things that we are doing to attract investment and to convince them that India is a good place to go to. The second major thing has been done, which I am sure you are aware of, the production linked incentives that were announced. It all started with the production linked incentives on mobiles and certain electronics. Then it was on second set, it was on the APIs and some of the pharma. And now recently last month, Government of India in the cabinet announced PLIs on another 10 sectors. So, these together and these sectors have not just been chosen randomly, with a great deal of thought, great deal of consultations. We found that these are sectors which by themselves are important, but they will also spin off a lot of these backward and forward linkages and promote other sectors also, which are linked to these products for which PLIs have been announced. And so, these PLIs will be another major incentive. So, we saw how good the response was to the PLIs of mobiles and electronics. Now, the pharma, the medical devices and APIs expression of interest activities are over. I am told informally by the pharmaceutical ministry they have got a tremendous response from investors from outside. Almost a lot of leading mobile medical devices manufacturers have expressed their interest to participate in the India's growth story. So, this I will expect in many other sectors for which PLIs have been announced. So, we are doing two things. One, we are making a lot of systematic reforms in the country in almost every sector. The agrarian reforms, the labor sector reforms, these are some of the recent examples and some of the other examples that I gave. Then the lot of focus on infrastructure improvement, more airports, more ports, more highways, better connectivity, more OFC connectivity, more telecom connectivity, increasing the bandwidth. These are some of the infrastructure changes that we are doing. We are simplifying procedures, we are doing better hand holding, that is the another set of interventions. Third is the PLIs that we mentioned. So, I think together all these steps will definitely bring a lot of investments into India, particularly when global investors are looking for a if not relocation completely, but for a second location for their investments outside a particular country.
So, one would agree that you have taken several steps, the Government of India has taken several steps, simplified the processes, reduction in taxes, PLI scheme as you mentioned. But sir, ever since the US-China trade war broke out, we were expecting that MNCs would shift pace. At present, how is the response that they are showing?
Oh, response is very good. If you had looked at the PLIs which were announced for mobiles and electronics, which I spoke a while ago, you will be surprised that almost the entire Apple phones are now being manufactured in India, and in the times to come, as they further shift many of these things, you will find the entire Apple, all the recent models are going to be manufactured in India. So is Samsung, so is many other sectors. These PLIs are targeted at such large products, and I am sure a lot of these things will be starting their production facilities in India. And as we monitor close to around 1000 odd companies, which have at some stage in some fora expressed their desire to come to India. Could be press announcements in their own country, could be social media announcements, could be the board level decisions, could be they are setting up an India office, could be they are going to a particular state government to sign an MOU, could be they are looking for land and buying land, starting construction. So, we monitor these movements, we closely interact with them, we have an Invest India team which talks to them constantly. If they have some problems with, say, in some particular governmental approval process, we try to identify that, be the via media between the investor and that particular organization where they are facing problem, and that's how I am quite confident with the response I am seeing. A lot of multinational interest while we are receiving from all over the world, but particularly from countries like US, Western Europe, Canada, the Northern America, then there are Japan, of course, a very important partner for India, South Korea, Singapore. So, these are some of the countries from where we see most of the MNC proposals coming to India.
All right, sir. Talking about exports now, India really needs to ramp up exports. How do we drive our exports and increase India's share in global trade?
Two things: if you produce good quality, so that's where the quality control orders and the standards become very important. So, we have identified that one of the reasons we are not being able to match the global standards is because our standards have not been published, they have not been implemented, and or the standards have not been upgraded. So, that is a lot of ministries have identified their products which have a export potential or are being exported to scale up their quality through quality control orders, through the adoption of global standards by the BIS. Second is enhancing manufacturing, the quality of manufacturing, the scale of manufacturing, reducing the cost of production to various government interventions by reducing the compliance burden, improving the ease of doing business, because they all directly affect cost of production. Once you tackle all these, and then the states have their own incentive policies, through their own industrial industrial policies they have to promote industries. They give specific sector specific incentives, region specific incentives. So, all these are together, they ultimately lead to enhanced production, better quality production, and that is how your penetration into the export markets becomes easier, and that is how you export more.
So that reminds me that on 27th of August 2020, there was an interaction with the states and UT administrations on one district, one product policy. What's the latest on it?
So, that is a very important initiative we have recently taken up, both the departments in our ministry, Department of Commerce and our ministry, Department of Industries. Is Honorable Prime Minister spoke about that let each district be a brand ambassador for exports and this thing. So, you export only when you produce good quality. So, one district, one product, or one district, one exports, they are the same thing, ODOP or ODOE, yes, whatever we call it. So, taking a cue from the Honorable Prime Minister's this thing, because you know, for your example, wherever you have grown up, wherever you have your linkages, each district in India, somebody produces tala, somebody produces kiwis, somebody produces good quality ginger, does not have a marketing facility, does not have a cargo facility. For example, the ginger in Meghalaya, just because there is absence of good quality air cargo facility from the northeast, could not come to India for get exports. But after a lot of cargo facilities are improved in the airports in northeast, and a couple of private airlines started flying cargo freighter services or the underbelly cargo services in the aircrafts, you certainly find northeastern ginger, northeastern vegetables and fruits going to the Middle East, to Dubai. So, that is how each district you have to identify what is a unique product, whether you can consume that entire produce that you are doing there, or can you increase the scale of production, the sophistication of the product, the quality, and then you sell nationally, then you sell internationally. So, one district, one product, one district, one export is essentially to create structures in the districts. So, that the district is conscious about a unique product or service they have to offer. There is certain district which produces excellent services. Nurses come from that particular district all over the world. So, there are districts which can produce excellent products. Carpets come from a district. So, that is what you have to identify that. Look into the factors of production, whether there is a need to improve, whether there is a need for a central intervention or a state intervention, whether there are some marketing linkages need to be established, some infrastructure facilities need to be improved, and then give them the facilitating environment. If it is does the geographical indicator registration required to be done to register the uniqueness of that. For example, some 6 to 7 toy brands, they have that geographical indicator has been registered today. So, some districts make excellent ceramic toys, for example, some make excellent handicrafted toys, embroidered toys, clay toys, wooden toys. So, I am just giving toys, you have so many varieties in the country. So, that was the whole purpose, to identify the unique product, look at the linkages, look at the support they require from the central and state government and promote them.
Well, absolutely, sir. Two quick points on policies. One, of course, perhaps there are apprehensions about the new e-commerce policy. Would you clarify?
No, you know, when they sometime in 18, before the last Lok Sabha election happened in March 2019. So, before that, a draft e-commerce policy under the previous government and the previous commerce minister, when he was there, that time it was published. But then government, though it is a continuation of the government, but then ministers change, a lot of the priorities change, then and also the environment changes. So, what happened is, then there was a data privacy bill that was introduced.
Yes.
So, then it was felt that in view of the introduction of the data privacy bill and the increasing size of e-commerce, then the challenges it poses to the unorganized retail, this large number of retail that you have in the country. So, and the increasing preference for the e-commerce trading platforms among the, not only the tier 1, the metros, but even the tier 2, tier 3 cities. So, we felt there are important issues like data, what kind of data can be, whether the data should be recognized, localized, controlled, uncontrolled, whether, and particularly what changes, what kind of a policy policy formulations you require in view of the data privacy bill, because you have to, that is a bill. So, you have to abide by that. Then there are consumer issues, because if there you receive a counterfeit product, what are the recourses you have as a consumer. Similarly, then there are issues of how can you use e-commerce to enhance exports. That one district, one product example I gave. It could be a small village and small family of 5 to 6 artisans in some village in Himachal, who make not more than 100 caps in a year. How can you use the e-commerce platform to bring their products to other parts of the country, where they get a better margin, or take it abroad outside the borders of India to give them a still better margin and recognition. So, these are, a lot of things are there. So, we have several rounds of discussions. Our honorable minister had several rounds of discussions with different stakeholders. We had presented our views before a select group of ministers who have stakes in the e-commerce industry in the country, and their secretaries and the other this thing. So, we are more or less working on a framework now. So, I think we will share it again, that internal final discussions are going on. Once it is ready, we will put it again in the public domain for the seeing whether what is, how acceptable it is, and what are the other views, and then we will take a final call on that. But it is a very complex subject.
Absolutely, I agree, sir. And lastly, sir, you said that there would be a national plan on multimodal connectivity to reduce logistics cost. What would it entail for the industry?
You know, basically, as it happened in the country, a lot of industries were organically developed. There was no planned development for certain industries. The carpets in Bhadoi, for example, the silver filigree works in Cuttack, or the silver market development work in Rajkot in Gujarat. Say the entire Coimbatore belt of textiles, the Ludhiana Jalandhar belt of small industries and textiles and small industries in Punjab. You know, these industries have grown thanks to the local initiative and the enterprise of the local place. Governments probably played some minor roles in some schemes somewhere, some benefits came, some local benefits were given by the state government or some central government schemes. But these industries are largely grown, and suddenly they find they have grown too big for the size they are. They do not have access to good quality airports, they do not have access to cargo, they have tremendous logistics cost, they do not have a rail connectivity, they do not have a dedicated freight corridor. So, they do not, if they are a riverine state, they do not know how to use the riverine resources to send their goods across the river. So, then it was felt that infrastructure development happens in the country, but everything happens in silos. The railways has its own capital development projects, the capex project that we call. The Ministry of Highways has its own, when to develop which highway, which section, which highway 2 lane to make it 4 lane. The Civil Aviation Ministry decides where to construct a heliport, where to construct a airport. But nobody is taking as a mission that all these activities are essentially to provide better connectivity and efficient multimodal connectivity to an economic activity happening in that area. For example, if there is a carpet industry in a particular district in UP, they require good quality internet data, for example, from the villages they work through, communicate with their partners elsewhere, everywhere, if they are exporters. They require good quality road transport to where their truck traffic can continue unhindered to reach faster wherever they are. They require good quality train access, good quality plane access. बनारस से उनको फ्लाइट मिलना चाहिए दुबई सुबह जाने के लिए to therefore their businessmen to go. So it was felt that each ministry, this infrastructure ministry, there are 7 of them. The Minister of Telecom for the OFC connectivity to provide internet and bandwidth, good quality bandwidth, the highways, the railways, the dedicated freight corridors, wherever there are rivers which can be used like the Brahmaputra, the Ganga, the some of the other ever flowing rivers, the airports and the heliports and all these and water aerodromes, like wherever the water aerodromes are possible, all these and railways and the freight corridors, this is Delhi, Mumbai and the Delhi, Calcutta freight corridors. So these are essentially should serve the economic activities that are happening in and around them. There could be industries, there could be clusters, there could be a park, could be a estate. So all these should happen in a defined manner. The industry knows what kind of infrastructure facility is coming to that place in which year. So their capital announcements, their budget allocations, everything should happen in a predictable manner. So it is essentially planning, announcing all the economic activities to marry with all the transport infrastructure activities, multimodal activity. So there is a perfect synchronization between this and that, and you have excellent multimodal connectivity facilities in all areas of the country wherever there is some economic activity happening. Could be by an agriculture cluster, could be an industrial cluster, could be any such economic activity, could be a services sector also.
Well, absolutely, sir. On that note, thank you so much for joining us and for this erudite conversation and speaking to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you.